Hey there, lovely people. Thank you for joining me. My name's Tal, and this is a series where I get to talk to people in the TTRPG industry and the writing industry, get to know a little bit more about them, what they do, and just learn a bit more about their craft and, how they do things. So today I'm really excited because I have an amazing guest on for me today. Novelist, scriptwriter, voice actress, director, there is no end to her talents. She has just recently won a BFSA for audio drama The Dex Legacy. It's Emily Inkpen. Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being on. It's greatly
And
appreciated.
that very overwhelming introduction, I feel like
Yes, but it's all true though, isn't it?
I feel like, Daenerys Targaryen when she's sitting
Oh,
on the throne and that person's
reel
like
off all the
reeling off her
titles. Yeah,
names
it's like,
and everything.
whew,
Yeah.
5 minutes
At no
later.
point, exactly. And she's sitting there and she's just listening to it all, and there's not even a flicker. And I'm thinking I would be sitting there going, well,
No,
just,
that's too many.
that's enough. That's enough. You can, like they get the idea.
Yeah, we know. No one could be worried if they get left out. It's fine.
Exactly. It's cool. No one else is here. We're good.
So just for those that haven't met you before, can you just introduce yourself, where they can find you, and some of the stuff that you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a writer, novelist, as you mentioned. I'm I wrote I write the audio drama, The Dex Legacy. You can find me everywhere. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Threads, I'm on Instagram, all at Emily Inkpen. I have a background in marketing, so when it comes to finding things, I'm very sort of like, it's emilyinkpen.com. It is at Emily Inkpen. It is Emily Inkpen here. I have the same profile picture wherever I am because, it just means everyone knows who
Consistency.
I am everywhere I go. Same banner picture. It's all branding and it makes me a bit sick, but at the same time, I'm like, it works,
But you know what you're doing.
and
You know what you're doing. That's the
yeah,
key thing.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you're a writer out there and you are starting out and you're thinking, how do I brand myself? That's one of the key things. Consistency.
Absolutely.
Yeah, discoverability.
So
Yeah.
I do have a confession. I came across the Dex Legacy whilst
Mm.
I was looking for something to listen to, and I consumed it. I consumed series 1 and 2 in about 3 days.
No
So
way.
yeah, I was just like, okay, next episode. Okay, next episode. Keep going, keep going. Brilliant. Absolutely loved it. So good.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. Thank you so
And
much.
no,
It's
honestly, it had me hooked. So to actually get to chat to you is like, yeah, it's really cool.
oh yay.
And obviously, massive congratulations for the award as well. That must have been a really
Thank
big
you.
thing for you.
It is still weird. And what's really weird about it is, okay, so first off, I do social media for the BSFA, and I was on duty. I was in the award room at the time, live tweeting the results. So I was there in the front, getting
Amazing.
pictures of everyone who was getting their award and taking a picture, uploading it into the thread of Twitter, and continuing making sure everyone got their coverage. And then it came to the like my category, which was audio fiction, best audio fiction. And I knew I was up for one, so I was just there. I was like, yeah, okay, okay, next category. And I was still tweeting the previous category when my name came up,
Oh,
and it took me a
brilliant.
moment to sort of be like, hold
Oh,
on a
it's
second.
oh, it's
Uh,
me.
oh shoot. And then I had to put my phone down and run. I
Oh,
almost tripped over. I went up on stage. I was shaking. It's a glass trophy, so they give it to you and you're shaking, and I'm like, I'm going to be the person who
it's
drops
gonna
this and
yeah.
it smashes
Hmm.
all over the place. Yeah, but it's a weird one because the trophy itself is see-through. It's transparent glass.
Yeah.
So normally when you've got, proper writers and they sit there and they've got their shelf behind them and they've got their awards and everything and they're all on display. But if I have this award in the background, you
No one could
literally can't
no
see
one could
it.
see it.
Yeah. It
Brilliant.
is the ghost award. It is invisible. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter
no,
what I
I've
put
I've
behind
got
it.
I've got loads of awards. I've got like 20 awards. You just can't see them.
They're ghost awards. They are ghost awards. It's a beautiful design, but my God, is it invisible on Zoom?
Oh,
It's,
that's
yeah.
so funny. I love that.
Take my word for it, please. I
No,
have one.
I 100% believe you. So I'm really interested. How did it all start for you? So from like
The
going way
audio
way
drama
back. Well,
or
no, just from a kind of I guess writing point of view, because you've obviously
oh
been doing it for a long time. So how
yeah.
what was your first experience of going? Oh, this is it. I've produced something, if you like.
Okay, well, my very first version of that was when I was 12 years old, and I wrote a little novel called South Downs Drama School, and it was about an acting school, and they had ponies, and it was all very nice, and everyone was, and there was a bit of a murder mystery going on, but it wasn't a human murder; it was like an animal murder. I can't remember what it was, probably a horse, and or like someone had made it lame or something just before the gymkhana or something like that. It was very tame,
High
and I
drama.
wrote yeah, very high drama. And I wrote this thing and I was incredibly proud of it for 21 hours. And then I had my first writerly crash of confidence.
Ah,
And this
yes.
is a pattern. 21 hours is my crisis point. Okay. And that has
Okay.
continued since I was 12 years old. Like 21 hours after releasing something into the world, it's like my stomach dissolves and I just double up on myself and I'm like, what have I done?
And
What have I done?
that's
And I have this crisis of confidence.
that's really interesting, because I've met plenty of kind of people who go through exactly the same thing. They'll work
Yeah.
really hard, produce something, and then once it's out there, they'll be like, and it'll kind of the bottom
Yeah.
will drop out. But 21, that's a very specific kind of time frame. 21 hours, and then suddenly bang, it hits.
It's okay, so it's 21 to 23 hours, but it's never 24 hours. If I get past the 24 hours, I'm good. I'm golden. But
Yeah.
it's that danger zone.
Mm.
And yeah, the first time I was 12 and I had this crisis and I realized that it was rubbish.
Oh.
And I mean, it was accurate. It really was. It was terrible. So then the next book that I wrote really started the dark turn. And that's something I haven't really abandoned since. Dex Legacy is just, the latest iteration of that. But the next one I wrote was a ghost story about a child who'd been hanged during the witch trials and was
Oh,
haunting this
wow.
farm at the time of like, foot and mouth disease. And, people died and it was horrific. And that's sort of been my vibe ever since.
It's
I was about
if you
14 when I wrote that one.
if you've got something that works, like you said, you got to run with
Yeah,
it. That's, I mean,
absolutely.
it is
Yeah.
a terrible thing to say, but it's when you do see successful writers admit that, I can put stuff out there and I can still be worried about it. That's quite a, for amateur people like me, it's quite a, I can't say it's a nice thing to see because that's horrible, but
Oh, no, no.
but to know other
I think
people, professionals, go, "Ugh, I really don't like this. I feel weird about this." That's quite encouraging, I shall say.
yeah, I mean, with the audio drama, it's become less so because we've got this constant feedback and we've
Yeah.
got people coming back and listening and things and the download numbers every day. We can see through the stats that people are listening to it all the way through and not abandoning like
Hmm.
halfway or 5 minutes in or something. We can see the retention rates and our
Yeah.
retention rates are good.
Yeah. I was looking
And
at that earlier on.
yeah, I mean, like when I have a crisis of confidence, I look at reviews, I look at retention rates, I look at the stats, and the stats sort of ground me. And it's like, no, 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 we do have
Actually,
something here. People are listening, people are enjoying this. And yeah, but I mean, the darkness has not ended. I kind of joke in a very dark way with the Dex Legacy that, I mean, I meet people who write baddies and write dark material.
yeah.
And I sort of say, well, when it comes to darkness, I started with genocide and it's really gone, downhill from there with the Dex Legacy. and and it is kind of accurate. It's yeah, that was episode one.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
But I would say it's well worth checking out because it's well written. It's the acting's fantastic in it as well. You've got some amazing
Oh,
people
they're amazing.
working on
Yeah.
the project.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend anybody goes and picks that up and listens to it. It's well worth a listen. So when you started perhaps doing this a bit more professionally, what was the first project that you actually worked on, and what do you think you, I guess, learnt from that more professional setting? I guess.
In terms of writing.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, when it comes to writing and getting paid for it on a regular basis. I am a copywriter.
Okay.
So I write content, copy, website content for people. And copywriting is a very different discipline to writing prose, to writing scripts. But what I found is that it really ties in to all of this. It helps you to understand a voice, because everything you write for, if you're writing copy, if you're sort of copywriting for a company, a brand, whatever it is, you have to ingest the voice of whatever you're doing, tone of voice for the company, and then be able to communicate it in 5 words, 10 words, less. If it's a push notification, you want to do it in, like, 8 words.
Yeah.
And being able to distill messages down to that, those few words, and get that across, still get the message across. That is a skill in, I guess, well, brevity, obviously, but just discipline of language and vocabulary. The other thing that comes across is when you're writing for brands, when you're writing for so I used to write for the Hasbro games,
Okay.
and they have a player age.
Yep.
So you have to bear in mind simplicity of language, reading age. There's no point having a player age of a game that's like 5 years old and then using a word like ostensibly. Like, no 5-year-old is
Yeah.
going to
Of
be,
course.
Reading that and thinking, oh yes, of
Of
course I know
course.
what that
I
means. I'm
understand.
terribly erudite. Yes, absolutely. So you have to really think about who you're writing for. And again, that can be very educational when it comes to novel writing, when it comes to script writing.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in all of these different forms of writing feeding in to everything that you do. And also press releases, things like that. They all have a very, very specific demands, very specific patterns that you need to follow. And actually, copywriting, the latest Dex book that I've written, because Dex, the subject matter is very hard
Yeah.
and dark, but it's also stark, and it doesn't really mess around with poetry, or it's not convoluted. It is quite direct and to the
Hmm.
point of what's going on. And there's a message in there. The message is said. There's no beating around the bush.
Yeah.
And it's not a sort of, I would like to say it's not complicated. It's not complicated in how you read it, but it's complicated in how it makes you feel, I think.
Hmm.
And that is reflected really in this book I've just written, which is a Dex book. It's the latest one, and I feel like my writing style is changing all the time. But this one, I actually ran it through. There's a program called Hemingway. I don't
Yes.
know if you're
I have.
aware of
I've used
Hemingway.
it.
Yes.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did a whole chapter, and I copied and pasted it into Hemingway, and I got great scores across the board, which was lovely to see. The one that I got pulled up on was sentences too short and simple.
Yep.
And I thought, this is a site called Hemingway, who was
Yeah.
famous
Yes, you would
for
think that.
short,
Yes.
simple lines.
I mean, when I use it, I always get pulled up. My sentences are far too long and convoluted, and it's like, well, yeah, absolutely. He would. I would be pulled up on that. But yeah, I guess it's quite interesting, because I don't know, when we kind of write for TTRPGs and adventures and create monsters. I don't know if everybody considers about the voice and what they're trying to maybe portray across to their audience always. I think sometimes people get lost in, I'm the creator, I want to create this, it's mine, rather than you're going to be giving it to somebody, and it's got to be useful, and so therefore it's got to be readable, and it's got to be accessible.
I think that's a thing about world building, and something that I noticed about, or I really just recently noticed about the my methods of world building for the planet SB714, which the Dex Legacy is set
Hmm.
on. And that world is sort of my behemoth, and I, most of what I create at the moment, at least, is set there. But the world building for that is I got into character while I was building the world. And
Yeah.
the character was the people who landed on the planet and explored it.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I realized that I'd done was that instead of thinking, like a sci-fi writer, I will come up with all these beautiful original names for things because
Yep.
I can and because my imagination does that. I
Hmm.
thought, okay, what were the people going into like America doing? And they were just naming things New York
Yep.
and,
Repetition. Yeah.
New Orleans. Yeah, how many Birminghams are in America? How many Manchesters?
Yeah.
They just named them after their own thing. And I realized the people, to make this realistic, you need to think about the people who were there at the
Yeah.
beginning,
Absolutely.
and think about their voice. It's not you as a writer. That's where the reader is very conscious of the fact that they are reading something written by a writer, as
Yes.
opposed to reading something that was made organically by
Yeah.
characters in it. And that is a big difference when it, like world building. I think is, like Tolkien, all of the
Yeah.
cultures are there. They all make sense. You can see where the names come from. You can see where the places come from. There's references to geography in it. There's references to that. You can see how the people created the world and everything in it. And that, I think, is the best way to world build. I mean, not that
Yeah.
I'm like, biased or anything, but you can tell when a writer has been like, it is my world.
Yes.
And then you are
Absolutely.
conscious of the writer
Yep.
in the world.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely, definitely. I'd
yeah.
100% agree with that, and that's
Mm.
definitely one of the interesting things. When we've kind of done world building in the kind of TTRPG sense, getting players to, as they go through, help build the world out works really
Mm.
well because it's their voice kind of talking to you about what they've seen and where they've been, and I think that adds a kind of flavor which you can't necessarily add as the creator yourself.
I think that it's definitely a case. So when I'm creating a world, I do it character first.
Yeah.
So what this would mean is that as a DM, you create as much as you need immediately for the next thing, and then you let the characters decide.
Yeah.
If you've got characters with backstory and the backstory says this character comes from a place where there was mountains and it was far to the east, well, that's great. Now your world has mountains far to the east. Fantastic. It's relevant. Brilliant. Now they exist. And being able to let the characters build, and then the context that comes from that helps to shape the world. And yeah, absolutely. But of
Yeah.
course, in TTRPGs, you're not building the characters.
Yeah.
They're building the characters. So it's then the collaboration,
Yeah.
and
100%.
the world fills out around you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What was your breakthrough moment? When did you kind of go, oh, I've actually made it? Was there that moment, or did it just suddenly hit you one day and suddenly go, oh, I've been doing this for a while now, and no one's caught me. This is great.
I think as a writer, it's very dangerous to say I've made it. Like,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have not. I mean, technically, it's because I haven't got, none of my books have been published yet. Like the audio drama is based on my novels.
Yeah.
The novels haven't been published yet. The audio drama is doing very well,
Mm.
and everything. So, my spouse has this joke that I'm going to be the most successful unpublished author ever because I've already, won a BSFA award. We got the audio drama, we got all of this
Yeah.
stuff, and technically my books are still, like, hello, does anyone want to publish them? Um, so, I mean, which is crazy because it clearly has the audience all
Oh,
there. So,
absolutely.
but,
Yeah. 100%.
yeah. I mean, when it comes to the audio drama, I think it's a case of you've always got more people to download, more audiences to reach,
Yeah.
more, depths to sort of, what do you call it, like mine when it comes to potential and everything. Um, I don't think I'm ever going to be done. We've just started doing a spin-off Okay, so we've just
Yes, I saw that.
we've been in the studio, yeah, doing a spin-off called Wasteland, Dex Legacy Wasteland, and this is set in a completely different country. I've never looked at this in a novel before. The characters are all brand new. The
Okay,
world that this is set in, the area of the world that this is set in, is barely talked about in the novels.
okay,
You know, it's a very new environment,
yeah,
um, which is exciting. But it also means that the narrative or any supporting materials, whether I write novels for it or novellas or whatever to go with it, that's all brand new as well.
okay.
And it's never done, and it's never complete. And I think that the more you do, the more you know what you're doing. But
Is I
yeah,
wonder if that's the curse of the writer is that there will always be more things to talk about within your creations.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I think it never ends. It never properly ends. And how terrible would it be if it did? Like, you know, how
Difficult,
sad would
yeah.
that be?
To go, oh, there is nothing more to tell. Yeah, I can imagine that would be a challenging point to kind of come to. Definitely.
I think a lot of people do it. So, okay, I was thinking recently about writers who write standalone stories and writers who write ongoing worlds and, and just expansive universes that keep going and going. And I guess in TTRPGs, there are people who write one shots. And there are
Yep.
people who create much more lasting campaigns that can take people over the course of weeks and months and potentially years if you want to go that far.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and there's a huge range of these things. And yeah, I think that there's, when it comes to sort of, are you ever done? I mean, there might be a point where I just decide, you know what, I'm done with SP714 for a while. You know, I will try something else
Yeah.
now, and then maybe I'll go back to it later. I mean, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, so I'm 34, and in the writing world, that is like young.
It is. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And I'm like,
So
you know what? I should just, yeah, embrace
so
this. It's like
we've got
if I
years of stories to come. Excellent. Lovely.
exactly, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm like, okay, so I could spend the next 10 years
Easily.
on
Yeah.
SP714 until I'm like 44, 45. And then I'm still at the age when a lot of people get their first novel published.
Yeah.
And and I'll have had 10 years in SP714 having a lovely time releasing audio drama and pretending I know what I'm doing. And and then I can be a grown up and maybe I will know what I'm doing,
Oh
in 10
no.
years time, and
I,
I'll do something else.
I'm
You know.
47, and being a grown up is very overrated. I do not recommend it at all. It's not
But at
worth it.
which point does that happen? At what
Oh,
point does that happen?
uh, uh, it's a good point actually, because I'd say I'm a grown up, but I yeah, no, I'm not. So I can't really say that actually.
I mean, I don't know anyone who's like, yes, I am a very serious grown-up person. I know exactly what I'm doing now.
So it's a really good point actually. None of my friends are grown up, so maybe grown ups don't exist. Maybe it's something we fooled ourselves into believing, and that actually there's no such thing.
There's no such thing because we're all growing up
Yeah,
technically until the end, aren't we? If we
yeah,
want to
yeah,
get philosophical about this, we are all in the process of growing up
yeah.
constantly. Although
Absolutely.
I will say that I do subscribe to the Hobbit idea of the fact that you've got teens and then you've got tweens and then you've got grown up. And the tweens are in your 20s, and you're between being a teenager and being a grown up.
Yes.
And that really resonates with me because now I'm in my 30s and I look back and I'm like, yeah, when you're in your 20s, it's your tweens. You
Yeah.
really, you haven't properly, you are
Oh no.
finding your feet
Well,
in that
yeah,
decade
absolutely. I mean,
completely.
I think a lot of people are still trying to find their voice, even kind of like 26, 27, and even like
Yeah.
careers, and and who they're gonna maybe end up with for the rest of their lives. It's not. It's it's definitely an evolution, because I don't think, if you were to go back quite a few years, generally think most people made those decisions much younger, or were forced to. But now I think everything's taking that much longer to try and find out who we are. There you go.
that much longer to, age and everything. Everybody looks young until
Yes. There you go.
yeah.
Bit of philosophy for everyone this afternoon. Then.
Yeah, like how deep are we going to
Absolutely.
get? We should yeah, I feel like we should roll a dice quickly and, bring things
Good.
down.
Next question. How do you get your inspiration for your work?
Mm. Um, sorry, I just had to take a drink there. Um,
You carry on.
it's um inspiration wise, I mean, I guess it's inspiration leads to inspiration, story leads to story. And when I'm writing and when I'm writing characters and when I'm writing world, I call it the why Warren. And you follow the why Warren, everything that you do. This city exists in this place in the world. Why? Well, because when people landed in this continent, they did X, Y, Z, and it led them to here, and that was a great place to trade. Why? Well, because the materials in that country were this, and this. Why? And it helps you to build things. This character is moody. Why? Because this thing has happened to them. Why? Because they belong to this family. Why? And what's wrong with that family? This happened. Why? And you keep asking yourself why as you go. And the thing is that the more you go down this warren, the more offshoots of potential stories there are. And you kind of have to stay on track. You have to be a bit disciplined about this because you could
Yeah.
just go in any which direction. You got to follow the ones that are relevant. But at the same time, those possibilities and those directions are still there and they're still unexplored. And as a result, sometimes you sort of backtrack and you go down an offshoot and go on a side quest, as you might call
Yeah.
it, a narrative sort of exploration or side quest. And then you discover a whole new story that could be told, a whole new set of characters, a whole political situation that unfolded for a very, complicated reason. And yeah, it just never really stops. I don't think it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I get absolutely. I mean, I think again, kind of relating that back to writing TTRPGs, you kind of go through the
Mm,
process, the adventure ends, but then you've kind of got, okay, well, why did this item end up here, and why did
hmm
what was the purpose of this villain's story? Why did that happen? And you start pulling it apart, and then you suddenly got the additional kind of like side quests and branches of the storyline, which just I guess increase the world and give you that kind of inspiration.
I mean, I'm making an RPG at the moment
Yes,
set in
I
this
was gonna that was gonna be my
world.
next question.
Aha, yes, segue. Right, yes. Okay. So that was very
Thanks very
smooth,
much.
wasn't it? Yes, absolutely. Ha ha ha. Yeah, so I've been looking at this thing. Basically, they go to a city in the first book, and there's this city called Ranette, which is the city of three borders. And basically people go into the city and they can come out in whatever country. It's like this melting pot and this open gateway pretty much to this continent.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of illegal crossing of the borders going on. There's a lot of sort of dodgy customs dealings, shall we say. The whole place is run by, at the time of the books, it's run by a single mobster called Iran Felasovny, and she's like this very interesting um, sort of a villain really, but
Mm.
I would say villain by necessity in this environment. And so the thing that I want to sort of explore in an RPG, or give players the chance to explore, is this city previous to her, and sort of like her
Okay.
rising, as it were, and exploring the city, exploring the other mob bosses that are happening at the time, trying to sort of going on side quests within the city itself, navigating it, and and really discovering the monsters. And it's a city on three levels, so the map is absolutely mind-boggling because it's in layers, because apparently I hate myself. And it's the bottom layer is all canals, and that's where the trade happens, and then there's a middle layer, and then there's a top layer where all of the posh people live. And and so there's very different feels and everything. And it's to give the characters, the players, a chance to explore and explore characters from around this world
Yeah.
who are, brought together, for various purpose, but who each have their own idiosyncrasies and abilities and interests and political leanings and all of the rest of it. And yeah, just to sort of like say, okay, here's the world, what are you going to do in it?
Yeah.
Which is
And,
exciting.
and how has that been kind of I guess merging the background you come from, which is obviously very much the novelization and audio and having very specific kind of lines, to making that into a TTRPG. What was there a process behind how you did that, and how did it feel for you kind of going into that?
So one of the things that I really struggle with is the story. Okay, so obviously when you start off on as a DM, you've got a story, like a story arc that you want people to sort of follow, like
Yeah.
roughly. Okay, so I came up with this story and shared it with the group that I was gonna take on this journey, and they were like, "Well,
Okay.
that's spoilers," because I showed them what was gonna happen. Okay, so as a
Like,
writer, I was
ah,
like, well, this is the story, and you get to play along with it. And they were like, well, now we know what's going to happen. So,
oh no.
and that was a real facepalm moment and sort of like yeah, no, you've got the story, and you have to trust
Yeah.
that they will engage with it and enjoy it. You can't show them an outline ahead of time. There's no
No.
beta readers here in your
No.
group. You have to just go for it. And yeah, so that was the first funny thing about Lee is the idea that as a writer you have this thing. You're like, yes, this is my story. Present the story.
Mm-hmm.
The
No.
story is secret in
Yep.
RPGs. You do not tell them the story.
It's quite
And then
funny.
if it goes off course, you can just pretend it was intentional.
Absolutely. Seeing
Yeah.
people on Twitter, there you can see that kind of frustration when they go, "Oh, I really want to tell all of you what amazing story I've got, but I can't because my party members follow me and it'll ruin everything for them." And it's just like, yeah, I know that feeling. Absolutely. You
Yeah.
want people
I
to
mean,
know
I did
it.
that up front. Yeah. It's like, I am a genius. This is fantastic. They are going to love it. There is no one I can tell
Yep.
at
It's all just
all.
got to sit in your head, and yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
And
curious.
several weeks down the line, I've got to get them there. And then we can, yeah.
Yes, and if they're anything like the parties I've run before, you kind of leave a trail, and they go, "Nah, no, we're not going
Yeah,
that." Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
you'll
that's always
probably
fun.
never get to tell that story. And you're
Hmm.
like, oh, so well intended.
Fine.
Yeah.
Have you because it's obviously set in your universe. Have you What
Mm.
kind of system are you using to run the role playing side of it? I'm curious.
So, okay, so this is the thing. I'm doing a bit of research really
Oh, okay.
into this because obviously there's like D&D rules and
Yep.
it's all very conflict based, but I've also been playing a game called Triumvine, which
Okay.
is all politically sort of motivated. So instead of getting classes and instead of, sort of having your personality, like lined up for you at the beginning of this thing and creating this character, what you get is um you get a history of the politics of the nation that you come from,
Okay.
the physical characteristics of this race, and you get to choose like a weapon or whatever. But generally speaking, it's just political, and you can fight, or most of the time you don't. It's
Yep.
all negotiation, and it's a very different way of working because it's not just okay, let's go to this dungeon, let's fight these
Yep.
monsters,
Mm-hmm.
let's do this thing, let's clear this dungeon, well done, go back, here's the gold. It's much more sort of okay, well, you've got to this place, you are now on a ship that belongs to an enemy, and you've got to negotiate with the captain, but you yourself belong to a race that they are currently at war with, and you've got to work out how to do this. Like, you can't just knife the captain because
Yep.
you're on a ship full of their
The kind
subordinates.
of
So you have to.
intricacies of role play and politics and how that all blends together.
Uh,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's not like in terms of RP, like in terms of system and rules, you can do all sorts of things. And
Yeah,
I'm thinking I'm gonna like blend the two a bit more. There's gonna
excellent.
be people, especially like with the classes, there are people in the world who would be very adept at killing people,
Yep.
aka the Dex agents,
Hmm.
who are highly skilled assassins, basically, and
Yep.
spies. But they can't just go around killing people because then people start to think, huh, maybe this person's an agent and a spy.
Yeah.
And so they have to be more subtle about it than that. There's all sorts of ways that you can take it. So I'm currently in the research phase
Okay.
on the rule front.
Yeah, because there's, I
Yeah.
mean, so there's definitely, I think sometimes people miss out on this. There are so many other different things than just the D&D rules. So
Mm.
one of the ones that I particularly love is Monster of the Week, just from
Uh-huh.
just only because it is so so much more descriptive, and it's not just about combat. It's about the individual and how you build them up and their character. And I would say I'm personally definitely much more of a role player than than like a stats and fighting and that kind of thing. So I'm always interested in how people pull together that side of it rather than perhaps the mechanical side of it, because I think
Yeah.
that's what makes the story flourish. Is how do
Yeah,
you let your
definitely.
players breathe almost and come to life?
Yeah. See, I'm funny when my character in D&D. Yeah, I always go back to her. Is called Sartre, and she's a Dragonborn, and she is a tank,
Great
right?
choice. Yep.
Yeah, she's got a warhammer. She smashes her way through things. She is fantastic. She's not that bright, but she really knows how to beat things up, right? And I'm always a paladin because I really like Divine Smite. I
Great spell.
just really like Divine
Yeah.
Smite. Okay, and I did the same in Baldur's Gate.
Yes.
Paladin,
Yep.
Divine Smite. I was like, oh, that move, it just makes me happy. So yeah, so I'm always I really should try more, but when it comes to D&D style stuff,
I must
that's
admit,
sort of my go-to.
my so in the game I'm playing, we're playing for about 5 years, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Dragonborn Tempest Cleric, and his job
Nice.
is literally just to bring out the most devastating spells and just crush people, and it's
Crush people.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
literally
breathe
his job.
fire.
Well,
Like
obviously, yep.
once a turn, you get to breathe fire on people, and it can be absolutely devastating, or it can
Mine
be just like a
Mine's
spark.
mine's electricity because I'm a bronze dragonborn, I think.
Oh, okay,
But
okay,
everything
okay.
I touch is just electrified almost. So, and I might
Nice.
throw out the odd healing word every now and then, but it's not very often. It's much more about destructive wrath. Oh, everyone around you's just exploded. Great, yep, my job
Yeah.
here's done. Thanks very much.
See, I love
It's
that.
not
I mean, I'm
complex.
gold. See, I'm a gold ancestry.
Nice,
So yeah,
very
like
nice.
the fire. It's just nothing more satisfying than breathing fire on people and directing that magical cone
Yep.
of destruction at a whole bunch of enemies. And like I remember at one point I broke through a door and my DM had set up like 7 enemies immediately outside this door, and obviously hoped that we would have a bit of trouble at this
Ambush.
point.
Yeah.
And I rolled like 19 on my fire breathing thing. I took out 5 of
Nice.
them
I
immediately.
love that. It's great. I see. I'm the same. So because he's a Tempest cleric, he gets access to
Uh-huh.
Call Lightning,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
the
Nice. Yeah.
one of the divine abilities is that any lightning spell it deals just maximum damage. So
Hmm.
just chuck out these lightning bolts that are dealing 50 points of damage, and it's just like, oh, they're dead, they're dead, they're dead. This is that. Thanks
Boo.
very much. Walk away. Thank you. Anyway,
I have
right.
to say though,
Go on, go on.
it was very funny in my first proper campaign thing. I was rubbish, okay, like a terrible player. I
That's
never looked at my spells.
100% fine.
Never look. Yeah, I mean, I was really inept, and I never looked at my spells. I never did anything. I was just walking around with this hammer, smashing things. I didn't know about Divine Smite. for about half the
Ooh.
campaign. Okay. And then we were in the Colosseum in what's the city? They go into it in the D&D movie. There's that
Oh,
massive Colosseum and they do the thing.
where are they
Yeah.
based?
Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So there's a city, the big famous Colosseum, and there was a big thing going on. And I was halfway through this fight, and then I was like, oh, I wonder if I've got any of this. And I was like, oh, okay. And I used it,
Bang!
and it obliterated this, really big
Oh.
player. And my entire team were like, how long have you been able to do that?
Yeah.
And why didn't you before?
But that's great. That's what I love about it. You suddenly discover these ridiculous things. You're like, oh, I can do that. That's great. And then all of a sudden it's just bang. Thanks very much.
So,
Walk
yeah,
away.
yeah, achievement unlocked.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, so
Yeah.
going back.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No. I mean, it's all good because it's I do find it interesting. I do find how people build their characters and
Mm.
it says a lot about the kind of way they tell stories. I think as well in terms of that
Oh,
character
yeah.
design.
Yeah.
What do you think when you are either building your TTRPG or writing all the audio drama? What are some of the biggest challenges that you kind of face? I mean, you mentioned before about that 21, 23 hours, and you're like, oof.
Yeah.
But what kind of other things do you struggle with, and how do you work around them?
So the main struggle with the audio drama is knowing that whatever I write is only base one. Because when you're writing a novel, the words on the page are the end product. When you're writing an audio drama, the words on the page are the foundation. And then on top of that, you build the voices, you build the sound design, you build everything, the music,
Yeah,
and then you release it. And then the listeners have a say in how it all looks and feels in their brains because the listeners become collaborative partners visualizing everything that's going on, and so you have to respect that side of things. But the script is way back in the
mm,
beginning of time, at that point.
yeah,
And as a writer, I find that incredibly intimidating because at that stage of things, it's very like for a collaborative process, I'm very on my own
yeah,
at that point. And I'm aware of the fact that this is a long way from completion in a way that, yeah, okay, with a novel, you write a first draft, you're a long way from completion. But with a script, you are aware of
yes,
that and you know that when people are reading it, they're either gonna like I'm constantly worried that people are gonna think it's a pile of trash, and I'm constantly trying very, very hard to make this not the case. And I haven't come up with a way to be particularly confident in that yet.
mm,
And so I think, yeah, the writing of the script it's intimidating and it's
yeah,
early in the process. And it is what everything else depends on. Because I mean, with so many things in audio drama, people say the Dex Legacy is very well written. Well, that's fantastic news to like, music to my
yes.
ears.
I'd agree with
Because
that.
I mean, it needs to be because it carries everything else,
Yeah, of
like it
course.
is the foundation. If you don't have that foundation, it doesn't matter how good your sound effects are or how good your performance is, you know, it's all going to sink on the
Yeah,
writing. The writing needs to hold it up.
yeah,
And
definitely.
that's the intimidating factor. When it comes to RPG creation, it's knowing that you've created enough for people to be able to take it and own it,
Yeah,
because I know this world so well that for me, I'm like, well, of course this is the case because of this and this. But have I communicated that to someone who
yeah,
wants to then lead an adventure in this world? I don't know. But then you don't want to be so prescriptive that somebody gets hold of this thing and is like, oh my God, there is so much to learn that I literally can't breathe.
yeah.
It's,
It
yeah,
it's a
there's a
very
lot of,
yeah. It's interesting because it's a very practical kind of worry that kind of goes into it, isn't it? It's the kind of you know, is there enough information? Is there too much information? Have I given them a good foundation? And I think sometimes we forget that it isn't just about the content. Great, it's well written, but it's all those other things as well, in terms of somebody's got to take this and do something with it.
Yeah. I think as I've been going with the audio drama specifically, when I was writing season one, my stage directions were non-existent. Like my sort of sound design directions and everything. I was like, no, well, Chris, who's the producer and
Yeah.
my partner on the show, I was like, well, he does this. That's his department. I don't want to be too prescriptive here. And I've learned that actually being a bit more directive in things helps
Yeah.
a great deal. Like, I also think, like I forget that when I say, you know, Raya's cabin, for instance, obviously that's on board Angel City.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's going to be Angel City background noises. But unless I write that, Chris doesn't have the same, sort of thought process of
Yeah. Yeah.
Raya's
Yes.
cabin. Of course, this is the case. And, that's where they're going to be. So I've learned that I have to be more consistent and prescriptive in my directions to support his work. When it comes to the actors, basically the script is about creating the thing that everything's going to stand on, but also the script needs to support everyone in doing their jobs
Yeah.
and provide them with enough support so that nobody's flying blind and everybody feels like they've got enough to stand on to do their job to the best of their abilities. And that is something that I've learned, but also something that I'm sort of like assimilating into the process. But it's also quite a heady responsibility because
Yeah.
when you're recording people and it's asynchronous and they're not there with you in the room, you're not there to answer their questions. And the number of questions became quite evident in season 2, which was all done in the studio. And at the beginning of every scene, the actors had questions about all sorts of things that I wasn't expecting. And then I thought, my God, if we were doing this asynchronously, all these questions would go unanswered. They
Yeah.
wouldn't have me there. And that was a huge learning curve as well. It's all about learning.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So we talked about it a little bit, but how do you actually deal with failure? So when things just don't happen for whatever reason, how do you deal with that?
Oh,
I'm sure it's never
okay.
happened, but on the rare occasion.
Well, it's sort of like a pivot moment. Okay, so you can see that it's not happening. So you have to pivot hard sometimes. Okay, so failure wise, all right. So probably my biggest failure to date has been not getting book one of the trilogy published. Okay, so I wrote book one of the trilogy. It's set 11 years after the audio drama. Um, it got repped.
Yep.
So repped author, fantastic. You think brilliant, tick in the box. Did not get picked up by a publisher. In the meantime, I was like, okay, but I know there's an audience for this.
Yeah.
I know there is because people who have read it have said it's great. The characters are all fun, like there, and I want to explore this more. So, okay, so basically, I did the worst thing you can possibly do as a writer. Okay, this is the worst thing you can do. The best thing you can do as a writer is if something doesn't get picked up, put it to one side and work on something new, and then see if that gets picked up instead. Now, what I did was I went away and I was like, okay, no, pivot into this direction so that I can then prove that I'm right
Right.
and there is an audience for this. And I was right, and there is an audience for this. But
Absolutely.
that means that I've got this book that nobody wants to publish, but I'm like, but look, it's got a thing, and I can't let it rest now. I've done the worst thing. I've got this book that nobody wants to publish in the future. I don't want to publish it anymore yet because if it did come out,
It
huge
would.
spoilers for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
audio drama,
Absolutely.
like huge. Um, so I don't anymore anyway. But I like if you've got something that isn't doing well, but you're like, yes, there's an audience there for that. This thing is failing, but I know it doesn't have to fail. I'm not ready to let it go yet.
Yeah.
And then prove that it's not a bag of crap. And, it does have an audience. But then you're like, oh crap, now it does have an audience. I can't leave it
What
alone.
What
I
do I do?
can't
Yeah,
abandon that audience. Yeah, and then you're kind of tied into it. And I mean, not that I'm worried about this. I absolutely love it. These
yeah. No, of
characters
course.
are, yeah, they're all part of me. But yeah, like I guess the failure with that novel, it sort of led me to want to prove being right. That's how I dealt with it.
No,
I sort
I
of doubled
will
down.
never.
I doubled down, and I'm gonna say that's not necessarily the best way to deal with failure. If we're gonna call that failure, like
Well,
doubling down, maybe
I
not.
I would admit that I've done exactly the same thing. So
Yeah,
I've sent stuff out and gone, okay, well, I'm going to start writing the second part of that, and it's like, okay,
yeah,
but there's no interest in the first part whatsoever.
nope.
So considering you need the first part for the second part to make sense, this is not a good use of your time at the moment.
I wrote the entire trilogy. So the book that was repped, then I went on, wrote the entire trilogy, and then it still wasn't going anywhere. So then I went back in time and did this audio prequel. It's like no. The pivot point here was never picked up. Technically, it should be like, no, Emily. There is a rational part of my brain that's going, just try something else, Emily. Try something else. But then at the same time, I'm really pleased that I didn't, because
Well,
the
yeah,
audio
absolutely.
legacy is, fantastic. The people, the
Yeah,
fans, and everything.
I guess it's really
Yeah,
difficult because it's that gut feeling of I know deep down this has got something against the kind of rational.
yeah,
Yeah, but look at everything that's being told over here in terms of what people are actually telling you, and it's like, okay, at some point, one of them's going to win,
yeah.
and I think
But then it's
obviously you chose the right thing because, as you said, I mean, there's a huge fan base out there for this. Clearly,
yeah,
you know the quality of the actual work, the production, the voice actors, you could just tell that everybody is genuinely wanting to be a part of it. You know sometimes when you hear things, you
yeah.
could just see that you've got people there that are enjoying what they're doing and doing it to a really good standard, and I think that comes across in your audio drama definitely.
Yeah, we're really lucky. The cast, I mean,
A
so far,
fabulous
touch
cast.
wood, they are an amazing cast, and
Yeah,
they're all up for it.
yeah.
And they're up for it on an ongoing basis. And that means so much. I say touch wood because the idea of one of the main characters pulling out and having to recast them is just fills me with dread
Terrifying,
every
yes.
single, yeah, every single time it comes up. I'm just like, ah! I mean, imagine if Cam couldn't be Varian anymore. That would be, imagine if Charlie pulled out of being Ren, it would just be awful. And Kelsey as Isra, like we had so many auditions for Isra, and Kelsey just nailed it. And the idea of one of them just disappearing and
Yeah.
not wanting to be part of it anymore, it's like no, no.
So
And
I'm going
yeah,
to go completely off script. If you were faced with that, what do you think you
uh-huh.
would do? Would you rewrite and take them out, or would you recast if you had to? If you had no choice?
Can't. I mean, if I rewrote it, I'd have to rewrite the entire trilogy.
Yeah.
Like in the future, like no,
There's
we'd have to
so have to
recast because
recast. Yeah. There's so much
yeah,
because you've got all this in there anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I can't take them out. Like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
story is the story to an
Yeah.
extent, and because this is a prequel, I'm walking this narrow sort of path where I know exactly where these characters have got to get to, and I've got to get them there.
Mm.
And we can deviate to a degree, obviously to follow the fun and to like, take them on journeys. But at the end of the day, they've got to stay on this
That's
path
the
and get to
yeah.
where they need to go for those novels to
Mm.
kick off. And I know where this is going, and I know it's solid. Like this is where it's got to lead to, and I can't
Yeah.
wait to get everyone there to that final moment where I know the audio drama would end if in a ideal world we get to do it all the way through.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about maybe 7 or 8 seasons, so
Fantastic.
that's it's yeah that's sort of that's quite a lot of commitment. But I say this to actors when they come on board. I'm like, you have now been inducted into the Dex Legacy universe. this is your character. And I actually had a funny thing on Facebook. I posted that I was working on scripts, and one of the actors who's in it, but wasn't really in it much in season two. He answered, looks at the post and he was like, "I'm always up for work if you need me to, if you need
Oh,
any voices." And I said, "Well, you better be, because I've just written a massive scene for you in season three, and like that's your character." I was like, "Dude, you're
how
in it. You weren't in it much in season two, but season three, you're quite a big
how how
part
good
in
must that be
season."
though, from their point of view, to be told something like that? I mean, that must have been great from their perspective to go, "Oh, fantastic, great! I'm going to get a good chunky scene.
Yeah,
Amazing."
like, well, hopefully, I mean, hopefully it was good for him, and he wasn't thinking, "Oh, okay, well, I didn't know that."
No, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. Um, so one of the things I'm always interested is how. I mean, and I guess it might be slightly different for you because of where you background you come from. How do you deal with social media?
Oh God.
The $1 million question, which I don't think anyone has an answer to, but how do you deal with it? Because whilst it's amazing, it has its issues as well.
Okay, so when I was submitting book one of the trilogy, I realized that it would probably be a good idea for me to get on Twitter. So
Yeah,
I did this and I started building up a following.
yeah,
And this went very well. I was posting every day. My following was growing. I'm now up to 15,000 followers,
yeah.
which is lovely.
Incredible.
And that's great. And then Elon Musk bought it. And
Yes.
yeah, the thing is that building an audience like that takes years. Like
Yeah.
I was working on that consistently for years, and it's energy, and it's constant, and it's interaction, and it's I've made amazing friends through Twitter. I mean, Chris and I met through Twitter, and he messaged me and said, "Do you want to write an episode of an audio drama for me?" That was the seed of the
Go
bomb,
on then.
like, you know yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I've got to
Yeah.
know agents through Twitter. Like, I follow editors. It's networking at its best. Now,
100%.
one of the things that I have done on that platform, because I haven't left, and
Mm-hmm.
the reason I haven't left is because my corner of Twitter is brilliant. And it's the writing community on Twitter, which
Yeah.
continues to be gold. And I don't engage much in the political stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't bring it across to my corner of Twitter. I keep it all very writing focused,
Yeah.
and everything. And as a result, my feed tends to be very clean,
Mm.
which is nice, because if I engage in anything political or contentious, it saps the energy right out of me,
Yeah.
and it's so tiring. And then you've got multiple platforms to look at, and there's always someone being a dick.
Yeah, this is.
Okay.
You're not wrong. I mean,
No,
to
there's
be fair, that's just real life as well, though, isn't it? I mean, you can guarantee somewhere someone is.
someone is being a dick
Yeah,
somewhere,
100%.
on social or in the world. Yeah. And and as much, the problem with social media is that you can be a introvert and stay at home as much as you like, but as soon as you go on social media, you are technically walking out of your front door. You are
Yeah,
interacting with the public. And
absolutely.
yeah, there's only so much you can do to insulate yourself from human beings. And I mean, to be honest, I love social media. Twitter has been huge for me,
Mm.
and it's given me so much. It's allowed me to build up a circle of connections that have really helped. Facebook, I basically, I made a new Facebook account
Okay.
because I never went there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to work out, I was like, there's a lot of people on Facebook who I should be interacting with, but I don't want to go there because Facebook has been around for so long
Mm-hmm.
that it's my legacy space. Like it's like the messy cupboard in the corner that has way too much of my old junk in it. And when I open it, all of this crap falls out that was like me at 15, having a me at university drunken pictures with university people I never talk to anymore. And I was like, it's just messy. So to do Facebook again, I basically remade a profile. I made a new
Yeah.
profile, started fresh, got my fresh people on it, made it relevant to me, and
Yes.
I don't go to the old one anymore.
No.
And that was how I dealt with Facebook, because I was like, this is like, Monica's cupboard in Friends, that is the messy
Just the
cupboard where she
messy
doesn't want
cupboard.
anyone to
Yeah.
open the door. Yeah. And it's like, we don't want that cupboard. We're
And
gonna we're gonna close and lock that.
and it's a the thing is, it's because you forget sometimes how long Facebook has been around for now, and how
Yeah.
much of your life is in there, and it's not all pretty.
No,
Some
and
are
like as
some.
I say, the tweens. Teens and tweens, and I
Yeah.
was on there for all of that from the beginning. I mean, I went to Facebook from MySpace, like I was 15 on MySpace, and then Facebook was new when I was about 17.
Wow.
And those years, you get pictures and you get posts and you
Yeah,
share things.
I am infinitely glad that kind of growing up, because I'm older, that there's a big portion of me that does not exist out there on Facebook, and I am always glad for that, because that guy could, yeah, he did some stupid things.
I
There's
mean,
no
we
two
all
ways about it.
do. But then it's like, okay, so I'm going to take this mess and then I'm going to invite this editor to be my friend.
Yeah, and
Like,
and it's, I guess it's distinguishing, that personal profile and the professional one, and realizing that if you're a professional, that's what you should be.
in my professional profile and my personal profile, I mean, I'm always me,
Yeah,
and being myself is my brand, really. And I'm never going to be the serious person, like, in terms of I know what I do, I know what I'm good at, I know what I can bring, I know the discussions that I can offer solid, you know, stuff in, and I can talk about all sorts of subjects in a very informative way. I can do that. But underneath it all, I am me. And there's no escaping that, because if I put on a front on social media, as soon
doesn't
as
work.
someone met me in real life, they'd be like, "What is this?" And so, I tend to be very straightforward and very myself. And but I also think that being myself is a professional
Yeah,
front, because it is a professional side, because I am me. If I go into a job, I am me. This is what I bring to the job. And generally speaking, it's positivity, it's enthusiasm, it's support for other creatives, it's excitement to explore, it's experience with various forms of writing. None of those things are a bad thing. And in the middle of it,
absolutely.
I've got this, sort of messy humor that comes out, occasionally, and generally speaking, admitting that I don't know what I'm doing, but nobody does, and I'm aware of that because I spend enough time around writers and editors and people in
Yep.
the industry who are very successful in the industry, and no one knows what they're doing. So it's not unprofessional to admit that.
No, it's
What would
not.
be unprofessional is to pretend you do know what you're doing.
You've got
Oh,
all the
and then that
answers.
is LinkedIn. That is LinkedIn, the social platform, is when people are there saying,
Uh,
these are the ways you operate in the world, and these are the definitive answers. And you're like, no, Ben,
yes. Yeah.
don't be silly.
LinkedIn was always, when I was kind of corporate, was always the, well, you must have a LinkedIn profile and you must talk about all this. It's just
Mm.
like, okay, and I'm putting words out there, and they're all in management speak, and nobody believes it, and we all know that we're just trying to fool each other by talking about, here's some interesting ways to do blue sky thinking, and it's just like, okay, we all know we're talking absolute rubbish. Why are we bothering with this? Why not just get on with it? But I guess that's
Nobody
the
knows.
way.
And
No,
yeah,
they don't. That's the way it's kind of always worked. Oh,
yeah, I find LinkedIn to be the most toxic of social medias, because it is just all front in a way that the other social medias allow you to be honest. But
mm-hmm.
LinkedIn, nobody is honest on
No,
LinkedIn. Like I rarely see an honest post on
it.
that platform.
I mean, you've got to upload your CV to it, and let's face it, most people's CVs aren't honest anyway. So you're automatic. They're really not. I've done enough job interviews to look at it
That
and go,
terrifies
this
me. That
this is
so
this is
terrifies me.
awful. But you sort of go job description. No, 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 no. You're okay. You are making coffee in a coffee house. None of these things on this list are true. I'm telling you now. Um, And I do think
Yeah,
that's kind of
people.
how it works.
Yeah.
People want to big themselves up, and okay, I get that, but it's no way to start a professional relationship.
No, see, this is where I think I'm going wrong. Maybe I should do that more.
No,
You know,
please
I
don't.
mean, yeah. I mean, it
No,
terrified me when
no,
I
no.
was I went into a job. I went into a job, right? And there was this guy there who came in and he was doing an internship for a couple of weeks and then he was going to move into a job. He'd already got a job. And he said, you know, oh yeah, let's play a game, you know, how accurate is your CV? You know, what percentage of your CV is false? And I was like,
Like,
you made
none of it.
stuff up? Like you didn't tell the truth? And he was like, oh no, about 25% of mine is honest and the rest is all made up. And I
Yep.
was like, what?
But how?
Is that a thing? Like I just imagine I mean, I'm like a glass window. I have zero poker face. If I went into a oh, that was exciting. Suddenly fireworks started going off
Whoa.
behind me.
Okay.
Yeah, if somebody like interviewed me and they asked me a question related to that, they'd be able to see immediately that I'd made it up. I would,
It's do you know what? It's ridiculous to say this, but it is actually a skill to talk in management language like that.
oh
And
God, it is. Yeah.
it's just because in your head you're screaming. I just want to tell you a very obvious, straightforward, direct thing, but you want me to dress it up in this ridiculous kind of speech, and it's just pointless. But yeah, no, I agree. LinkedIn just, I try and avoid it
Oh,
wherever I can. Don't need it.
it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least all the other times, like I can be myself, and I am myself on LinkedIn, which means I never go there because, you know, people aren't interested. They want me to be someone else.
Yeah, that is what
Yeah.
LinkedIn is. It wants you to be someone else, definitely.
Yeah.
So we're,
Yeah.
we're down to our last kind of question.
Oh, sure.
I know. So one of the things we perhaps haven't talked about is one of your other projects, which is the fact that you do offer not just writing courses, but the whole kind of process of getting into the audio dramas. So, without giving away all your
Yeah.
secrets, because I'm sure people will want to go and check it out and maybe put themselves on the course. What do you think's the one thing that you learnt from doing those courses and teaching people, which you could perhaps share with the audience?
Sure. I mean, one of the things is that however obvious I think something is, it's not going to be obvious to another person. It's like common sense to one person is brand new to another, and that doesn't
Yeah,
mean the other person doesn't know anything or is, you know, is less good. It just means that one person's frame of reference is very different to another's.
amazing.
And,
Yeah,
you know, it's just a case of not letting anything go unsaid because the fact is that everyone deserves the right to have the same launching off point. And, you know, and I think that I mean I do these I'm actually prepping we've Chris and I have done joint workshops on writing and producing audio. Normally they're standalone or they're in threes. So we say, okay, sign up to this, you know, trio of workshops
yeah.
or just come to them separately. But for the first time, I'm ramping up to do a 10-week course.
Oh wow.
And it's basically going to it comprises 3 hour workshops every week with a roughly an hour of me talking about a important area of the audio production process. So be it directing, designing, you know, editing, all of these things. And people are going to write the idea is that people will write a audio drama every week. So the second 2 hours will be doing table reads and feeding back and sort of doing developmental stuff, be doing exercises. And basically at the end of this course, the idea is that somebody has got a solid thing that they can either submit. There's a very good award for brand new audio writers in the world. It's Pen to Print is the organization, and
Okay,
basically it's only open to people who have never had an audio drama produced before. So
that's great.
this it's an amazing opportunity for
Mm.
people to enter an industry with an award. with an award-winning script,
that's very cool.
which is so rare. And the other thing is, I mean, me and Chris at Alternative Stories provide us to the BBC. So if we think that someone's script at the end of this is good and, good enough, we can submit it to the BBC and see if the BBC will be up for making it. And let's face it, the BBC, the chances of this are very slim. I'm going to put it out there, but you do need to be a registered provider to do that, and we are. So,
and,
we can
that's
do that.
Massive. I mean, even just the opportunity is huge, isn't it? Like you said, that's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's the case that you do a standalone workshops. You do these standalone workshops, and you then it's sort of like saying, okay, well, now you're on your own, go and write something. But what I want to do with the ongoing course is say, okay, where are you at? Let's talk about that. Where are you at this week? Let's talk about that. And help people until it's done, until it's ready. And help people throughout that entire process.
That's amazing.
And yeah, that's the idea.
That sounds great. It really does. I think it's hard getting into any of these kind of industries. It's hard getting any of your work published, promoted. So anything that kind of gives people that new opportunity to, especially to hear new voices and different voices compared to the ones we kind of hear all the time, perhaps, is a great thing. So yeah, that sounds fantastic. Really does.
Well, hopefully, as I say, it's the first one. I really don't know how many people are going to be interested in it, but I really hope they will. It's something that if
I think you'll get a few people applying for it. I think you'll be all right.
Hopefully,
I really do.
Hopefully, it would be amazing if I did. Yeah,
it's been so brilliant to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I think I've definitely learned so much this afternoon. I really, really do appreciate it. Just before we kind of finish up, do you want to just tell everybody where they can find you and some of the stuff you're working on at the moment? And
sure, yeah. So you can find me at Emily Inkpen wherever you go on socials, anywhere. I think I'm at Inky Pen on Discord. I have at the moment we're ramping up to do Kickstarter for season 3 of the Dex Legacy. So you can find that Kickstarter page. Please follow it, and then you'll be the first to know when things go live. We've got fantastic tiers, very exciting things coming out. We've got limited edition t-shirts, season 2 scripts and commentary book, all sorts of sort of giveaway things related to that. So please follow, please spread the word about that, because season 3, I am writing it at the moment. It's all completely planned, and it is exciting. It is so exciting. I cannot wait. So yeah.
We'll make sure there's a link in the YouTube comments so that you can pop across there and check that out. So you'll get notified when it does go live. And yeah, I mean, if you've not already checked it out, I would absolutely recommend you pop across, and wherever you get your audio from, the Dex Legacy, it is well worth listening to. It's a quality piece of drama, and it's something you should be really proud of, definitely.
Thank you.
So there we go. That's everything for today. Thanks to everyone that kind of pops in and watches any of the videos. You can find me across the social medias under the Gamers Rest, Twitter, all the rest of them. And then we also have the YouTube channel, which I'm assuming where you found me, or you might have found this on Spotify as the podcast. But we've got lots of videos there, and we'll be talking to more creators coming soon. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Emily. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And take care, everyone. Look after yourselves and those that can't, and we'll see you real soon. Bye.